Every year, the editors from Wards evaluate the newest engines and propulsion systems from the world's top automakers. Then they pick what they believe is the best of the best, from V8s to battery electrics to fuel cells. On this week's show, they announce which engines made the list and why they were chosen. Underwriting for the production of Autoline this week has been provided by RSM.
Prepare for challenges specific to your business by working with trusted advisors who help turn obstacles into opportunities. Experience the power of being understood. RSM, Audit, Tax, and Consulting for the Middle Market.
And now, here's your host, John McElroy.
I want to thank you all for joining us on Autoline this week. Today we're going to be talking about engines. In fact, we're going to be talking about the 10 best engines. In fact, we're going to be talking about Ward's 10 best engines. We'll get into what I'm talking about here in just a minute. Let me introduce my panel to you. Tom Murphy, Drew Winter, and Bob Gritzinger, all from Wards. And great having you guys here.
Thank you.
We've been doing this for a number of years now. It's always a highlight of the year for me to be able to interview you about how you go out and evaluate the best engines. But Tom, you're no longer just calling it engines anymore.
Nope. 10 best engines and propulsion systems. General Motors renamed their entire powertrain division Propulsion Systems. We're finding automakers consistently spending resources on electrified vehicles, hybrids, in some cases hydrogen fuel cells. We have to recognize that the industry is changing, which creates some very dynamic challenges for automakers because you got to still spend money on internal combustion engines because they're occupying the vast majority of what people are actually buying today. But you can't ignore electrification, and vice versa. You can't go all in on electrification because you got to still stay where the market is. So anyway.
So engines is two piston kind of oriented. Propulsion is the new technology.
Yeah. Yep. Internal combustion. We had 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder engines in this year's competition.
Now there's only
clear. We're not giving up on engines here.
Yeah.
The piston version. We're just adding propulsion.
And it turned out that, I mean, we've had at least 3 or 4 electrified vehicles on the list now for a long time. I mean, starting with maybe 20 years ago when he had the Toyota Prius.
2001 when the Prius made the list. That was the first electrified powertrain. And ever since then, it's been battery electrics and fuel cells and hybrids and plug-in hybrids.
So it's not a totally new thing. We just decided to recognize the fact that we're...
Well, they're becoming ever more important now, not just a fringe kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. So we only have 3 of you here. I know there's much more of the Ward staff that are involved in this. How do you go about evaluating these engines?
Yeah. So there's 8 of us, and we're driving the vehicles in Detroit on public streets in the months of October and November. And we're only evaluating the all-new engines or the significantly improved, re-engineered engines. And the field, so the field this year was 26 powertrains. That's including last year's winners up against everything that was new this year. So we had 4 return winners from last year, plus then the rest of them that are new.
And how do you evaluate these? What do you go through?
We're out there driving on regular highways. It's, to the engineers, it drives them crazy because they want more specific, you should be able to measure everything. You should have a grid, a spreadsheet that, charts every point. Well, for us, it's horsepower and torque and noise, vibration, and harshness. How is it a pleasant sound or is it off-putting? Is there a lot of vibration in the steering wheel? Technology, we're all about recognizing what new technology is on board. And we've got 2 winners that we can talk about that have some really fascinating internal combustion technology. And then observed fuel economy, very important to us. And that's
so you're looking at this more like people who buy the vehicles.
Yeah.
Right.
We're evaluating them.
We're not Consumer Reports, and we're not like an enthusiast publication either. We're looking at more. One of our key Our key criteria is, does the engine or does the propulsion system help sell the car? I mean, do people go, and examples of that would be everything from, something like a V8 Mustang to a Toyota Prius or whatever. Those are very compelling, value propositions to the people who are buying.
And it's important to note that there's a price cap. So our competition is base price capped at $65,000. With options, it can creep above that in some cases, but $65,000 is our cap. And we've already had quite a few discussions among the staff about do we need to raise it up 70 or 75,000 perhaps because of some of the electric vehicles coming in that are from Audi and so forth to try to get more of those vehicles under the cap. And I don't know, I'm kind of conflicted about it. Part of me feels like, hey, if you're spending $60,000 or $65,000, you should be able to get a groundbreaking electric vehicle. So,
Yeah.
we have to
On the
decide.
other hand, there are federal programs to support electrified vehicles, and we don't take that into account right now. So
Yeah.
we've discussed some of that possibility, but it is things like how does the engine run off the line? Does it give me good power from 45 to 60? Those key measures that people feel in day-to-day driving.
What does
when
it
you need
sound
to
like at
pass.
idle?
Right. So.
Well, I see the finalists this year include one V8 engine, 4 different 6-cylinder engines, 4 different 4-cylinder engines, 1 battery electric vehicle. Let's get into some of those. And let's start with the V8. I mean, there's only one on the list. Bob?
Should be more.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like there should be more. And the one that's missing is the Bullet. But,
The Mustang V8 Bullet.
yes, we talked about the differences in Mustangs and whether you can put 2 Mustangs on the list. But the V8 that is on here is the Corvette, the small block V8 6.2 mid-engine dual clutch
So this
transmission.
is the engine in the new mid-engine C8 Corvette.
Exactly, exactly. And, it's hard to argue with that application. They've just done tremendous work. And it's not just taking the engine from the front of the car and stuffing it in the middle. They did all kinds of engineering work with the intake, with
The sump.
the sump. I mean, the DCT alone is a marvel, the Tremec DCT. So, yeah.
490 horsepower, or 495 if you spring for the Z51 performance package, 465 pound-feet of torque, or 470 if you get the sport exhaust. And we drove the lower level one, the 490 and 465, and just found it absolutely thrilling. 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds, and I was shocked at how tame it sounded. I was expecting this roar from behind me when we were driving it. And it was really an enjoyable daily driver, from a sound standpoint. I thought it was great.
Yeah, well, and to be clear, it's a Corvette, and in this case, fit under our price cap.
Just under.
$5 grand under our price cap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Very interesting. So the one V8, and maybe that's a sign of the trend of where things are going. Fewer and fewer V8 engines being made.
Well, yeah. To that point, the V8s that we did consider that didn't make the list, the Nissan Titan 5.6 liter V8, it's not raising the bar among pickup truck engines. The other GM V8 that didn't make the list is related to the Corvette engine. It's the 6.2 liter with that dynamic fuel management, that 17-mode cylinder deactivation. Very sophisticated, amazing technology. That made our list last year. This year, the brother engine comes along in the Corvette, same displacement, similar technology without the 17-mode cylinder deactivation. And for us, it was a no-brainer that the Corvette needed to be on the list but both of those GM V8s, very strong. And then, of course, the Bullet didn't make it.
The Bullet.
Okay, let's move on to 6-cylinder engines. And what I find so interesting here, you've got engines from BMW, Mercedes-Benz, GMC, and Fiat Chrysler. but 3 of those 4 engines are inline 6-cylinders, not V6s, inline. I thought inlines were going to go by the wayside 20 years ago. What's going on here? Why is the inline so popular?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons. I mean, it starts out with the fact that the inline engine is perfect balance. But one of the reasons that it was phased out was because they were difficult to package. So that's another.
Because they're so long.
Because they're so long. So now they've figured out new ways to package them. We can go into other things. But Grits, what else?
Well, I mean, take for instance the Mercedes i6. Because they have added 48-volt technology and an integrated starter generator, they can remove the alternator and all of the ancillary equipment on all those belts from the front of the engine, saves them all that packaging space, and you get this just super smooth stop-start. And that's just, I mean, that's one example of how these inline 6s have come back to the fore.
And if you're not to get too technical, but I mean, if you have 1 cylinders all in a line, then you only need like 2 camshafts instead of 4 for different cylinder banks. Yeah. You can use 1 turbocharger much more efficiently than having 2, which are expensive and take up a lot more space.
Mm-hmm. We were excited to hear that Mercedes was, was coming out with an inline 6. We're like, okay, we're going to have BMW and Mercedes going head to head on something that BMW, I mean, they've owned that whole segment of high output turbo inline 6-cylinder engines that run really smoothly and efficiently, tons of power, so enjoyable to drive. And Mercedes just nailed it. Not only did they to some extent match the BMW performance, but they also integrated 48-volt for great fuel efficiency. So we got low 20 miles per gallon in a big 5-passenger Mercedes GLE, which is basically the new M-Class. So you think of a vehicle that size at that fuel
economy. Pretty good size SUV.
Yeah, good numbers. And on the other side of it, the BMW, the M340i, there was almost no discussion about whether that engine belonged on the list. There have been 10 6-cylinder turbos from BMW that have made our list since 2007. Those are all gasoline, turbocharged inline engines. So they have a great history with these engines. The engine that made the list last year, the B58 engine from BMW, made 335 horsepower, and now in this M340i, 382 horsepower. So in the span of 1 year, they took a great engine, gave us 47 more horsepower. So it just illustrates how automakers, how rapidly they are refreshing their product. They might have a perfectly good engine, but they found ways to do something even better. So, talking about fuel economy, we were getting 25, 26 miles per gallon in that 3 Series with 382 horsepower, which is just outrageous, I think.
Yeah. So you've mentioned 48 volts. We've got it both on the Mercedes-Benz inline 6 and with the Ram pickup truck 3.6-liter V6. Are we going to be seeing more 48-volt systems coming in the future?
Yeah, I think absolutely, and mostly driven by, first, the European market, where efficiency standards are demanding that they bring that level of electrification.
And quick, explain, what does 48-volt do?
48-volt gets you some fuel efficiency. Primarily, it gets you really smooth stop-start systems.
Because it's an electric motor that's attached to the piston end.
Either it's attached at the transmission end, or it's a belt system, as in the Ram. And in fact, we have 2 examples with our 10 best list. The Ram is a belt 48-volt system, while the Mercedes incorporates an integrated starter generator right into the transmission.
And the Ram also puts a battery behind the second row seats, right?
Right, yeah. So, but we'll see as these proliferate in other markets, they may as well bring them to the U.S., give us that same efficiency, as well as things like, some low-end torque, some gliding capability at speed, some shift smoothing, a lot of benefits to 48-volt without going to a higher voltage hybrid system.
And so they're also called mild hybrids, right? And the whole idea is that they just give a mild boost, but they're much less expensive, so they do actually, their benefits really are outweigh their cost.
So yeah, in the case of the Ram, our test vehicle was $43,000. Now, if you're buying a dedicated hybrid pickup truck, prices
Going to be higher.
it's going to be higher than that. So it is a very affordable way to get some fuel efficiency into these very challenged segments like full-size trucks.
I also see, talking of inline 6-cylinder engines, there's a diesel on there. The GMC Sierra has a 3-liter inline diesel. First I thought inline 6s were going away, and now you guys have got a diesel. I thought diesels were dead, but apparently not.
Yeah, well, what's really significant this particular year is finally the time that we had all 3 major truck producers here in Detroit with light-duty diesel engines in the marketplace. All of them 3 liters, 2 of them were V6s, and the one from General Motors was the inline 6. We tested all 3 of them, and we really enjoyed them all. In my opinion, the Ram engine was a bit more noisy. It was louder than the others. The Ford engine is good, but the fuel efficiency wasn't as good. When it came down to it for me was that the GM engine was far superior in terms of fuel efficiency. Observed fuel efficiency, we were pushing 25 miles per gallon, while with the other vehicles, it was low 20s. Yes, you're going to pay a premium for the diesels. That's a challenging aspect of it because
They're expensive.
yeah, you're going to pay. In this case, it's $2,400 above the cost of the V8, the gasoline V8. So you got that. You have to factor that in, plus the cost of the fuel. So I mean, the business case to make for diesels is difficult. But if you're owning a pickup truck for the purpose of towing your jet skis or your boat up north, and you're going to be going steady state, I mean, it really is worth the money. And we just found that the Chevy engine was great. The last point is that towing is really important, and the GM engine actually tows less than both the Ford and the Ram. So we kind of looked at it as, okay, GM settled at about 9,300 pounds as what you can tow with that vehicle, while with the Ram you can tow 12,000. And
12,500,
so
yeah.
GM decided, let's go with the fuel efficiency instead of the really high towing capability, and I think it was a smart move.
Mm-hmm. It's smooth. That's a smooth diesel too.
Yep.
We also had another diesel on the list that Tom didn't mention.
Go ahead.
The Mazda 2.2, right?
Didn't make the list.
Didn't
yeah,
make the list.
It was a
but
nominee.
It was a nominee. And so interesting that we had 4 total diesels to test this year.
Yep.
So diesels were going away.
Yeah, so not probably much of a future for diesels in cars, but still certainly for light-duty vehicles and whatnot. There's still benefits there.
Yeah.
Okay, 4-cylinder engines. What jumps off the list is 3 of them are turbos. This must be the way that 4 cylinders are going.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're basically replacing most of the 6 cylinders out there, with 4 cylinders. So in the competition this year, we had 13 4-cylinder engines out of 26. That's half the field. Was 4 cylinders, and we had 6 6-cylinder engines. So clearly, downsizing is a thing, and for a huge segment of the market. So. Everything that was mid-size car, like the Honda Accord and the Toyota Camry and all those, they used to have 6-cylinder, and now they're all relying on 4-cylinder power. And then same if you step into the mid-size CUV market, such as the Chevy Equinox, the Honda CR-V, all those vehicles, they don't need 6-cylinder power, especially when you have these high output turbos, and even naturally aspirated. Some of these 4-cylinder engines are more than capable for vehicles that size. That's kind of the meat of the market, the mid-size CUV segment. So that's why 4 cylinders are so popular.
We just had such a tremendous variety of 4 cylinders as well. From the 2-liter Atkinson cycle 4-cylinder in the Honda Accord, all the way up to the high-performance 2.3-liter turbo 4 in the Mustang.
Yep.
And in between, a variable compression 2-liter 4-cylinder in the Nissan Altima. But one of the best was the Hyundai 1.6 liter.
What made it so good?
Continuously variable valve duration.
There's one.
This is the first. This is the world's first engine that uses a very sophisticated camshaft with lobes that actually rotate independent of the shaft itself, meaning that you can change the length of time that the intake valves are staying open.
Which no one has ever done before.
No one's ever done it before, and the mechanism that makes it all happen. Hopefully they can, hopefully your crew can add in a video to show it. It's pretty remarkable what it does, but ultimately you have the ability to change with every single cylinder how much air is going in. I mean, not just a whole bank at a time, but cylinder by cylinder, it can determine exactly how much air is needed in the intake valve based on your throttle input, based on your driving conditions. Are you going uphill? Are you going downhill? Is it steady state? And it's fascinating technology that really works. In our case, we were getting 37 miles per gallon in a Hyundai Sonata.
Not a hybrid.
Not a hybrid, and it's turbocharged. And this is a 1.6 liter engine in a good sized car that moves it with total confidence.
Yeah, and that's right. We tested engines as small as 1.3 liters this year. And there's a lot of motorcycle engines bigger than those, and yet each one, the Hyundai engine was really strong, and then the other one we tested in the Jeep Renegade was also surprisingly powerful.
And then only one strong hybrid, the Honda Accord. Right. As you mentioned, Bob, it's an Atkinson cycle. Why was it the only hybrid that made it?
We only had two that were in the field, so that one...
Because these are all new or major
or returning.
Yeah, and so this is probably a good time to explain how the field gets crafted each year. As I mentioned, it's all the new stuff up against what won last year. But each year, as you know, development cycles move kind of from year to year, from month to month for automakers. So for some automakers, this may have been a trough year where they didn't have a ton of new stuff right now. The company that brought us the most this year was Hyundai. Hyundai had six entries, which is a lot, and it wasn't just some warmed over product or mildly refreshed. They had 3 clean sheet engines. I mean, clean sheet from the ground up, whole new block, whole new head, intake, everything, valve train, all of it completely re-engineered, and so that engine that I was telling you about with the continuously variable valve duration, that engine, and then there's a naturally aspirated version of it, and then there's a 2.5 liter version. Those are 3 brand new internal combustion engines coming from one company. At the same time that Hyundai was also investing in, the Kona EV and the hydrogen fuel cell, and it's just encouraging to see them. They are playing the whole field.
In fact, well, let's talk about the Kona EV, because it was the only battery electric that made your best list here. Yeah. Why did it stand out above the others?
Well, we had at least our experienced range was higher. The Kona is almost in a dead heat with the Chevy Bolt in terms of overall range. The Bolt, which we also tested this year, added 20 miles or something to
21
it.
miles.
21 miles.
So yeah, the Bolt was rated at 259,
right?
And the Kona EV was 258.
Yeah.
And the Bolt got that extra mileage based on changes to the battery chemistry. Some clever engineering there to get more range, help to alleviate range anxiety and such. But so they were both pretty evenly matched. But we really did like that Kona.
Yeah, it was a bit of a horse race, but I think there were just a few things that the Kona just did a little bit better that we liked.
Smooth, quiet, power delivery, and I think the range.
And what?
Put it over the top.
It passed our burnout test.
It did, yeah. I actually squawked the tires repeatedly. I mean, not like...
Not just at launch.
Like in one launch, in one run, I'd squawk them, and then 2 seconds later again, and then almost like a step gear transmission. You know, it was the darndest thing, and I did it a number of times.
People are going to ask, why no Tesla on the list?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I would love to have a Tesla on the list. I would love to have a Tesla for us to test.
That's the issue. You just can't get.
I mean, we're here in Michigan. They're on the West Coast, and it doesn't seem like Tesla has a whole lot of interest in us. Media outlets in the Midwest for whatever reason. But hey, the door's open. I would love to have Tesla involved. We've reached out, especially with the Model 3 being available in higher volume now.
Well, and also that was the first one that really fit under our price cap.
Yeah, the Tesla Model S was too expensive.
The Model Y would fit, right?
Yeah.
When that
Not
comes,
sure.
so.
No, it's too expensive.
Yeah, I haven't seen pricing on that.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And I'm sure you're going to see a whole lot more battery electrics on this list as more and more of them start to come out now. As long as they're not too expensive.
I think you're going to see more and more of them on the roads. And that's where, we're watching that whole internal combustion electrification tipping point, and when does that come? And that's going to play a big part in all of our discussions of these powertrains.
Yeah, because the Jaguar I-Pace, that was another one that we were able to test, but it was just it was too expensive for our price cap.
Yep.
Yeah.
The e-tron.
Yes, right.
Audi e-tron will be too expensive
Well,
as well.
in just around the corner, there's going to be a lot of EVs coming out that are not quite that expensive.
Right, exactly.
I've heard that there's something coming from Ford.
Yeah, you heard right.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we're going to wrap this up. But I want to thank all three of you. Tom Murphy, Drew Winter, Bob Gritzinger. Thanks for explaining how you came to Ward's 10 Best.
Thanks, John.
Underwriting for the production of Autoline this week has been provided by RSM.
Prepare for challenges specific to your business by working with trusted advisors who help turn obstacles into opportunities. Experience the power of being understood. RSM, Audit, Tax and Consulting for the Middle Market.